It's Brianna, and today I'm going to be doing a fall book recommendation. I'm a mood reader, which means that I am in the mood to read specific books during specific times of the year, and in particular during fall, and for me that means October because that's when fall is in Arizona. I like to read spooky October vibe books. And you know what? I look on BookTube and I can never find any good video recommendations specifically for October. I watch the video and it's just it's not specific things that I think fit the theme of October. So I was like, you know what? We're gonna make a video because it took me it's hard finding some of these books, and I have a long list of books that I'm planning on reading this October. I think I have a shelf on my Goodreads that's 40 books long. So if you guys want to check that out, I'll leave the link down below, but can't recommend them to you because I haven't read them yet. So I can only recommend things to you that I have already read, which means that's what this video is for. There's actually going to be two parts to this video because I have 20 book recommendations, but I don't want to be here you guys having to watch this video all day long. So we're going to split it in half. 10 books in this video, 10 books in the next one. So if you guys enjoy this video, stick around. There'll be more recommendations. You guys should never have enough unless you've read all of these books, in which case, good on you? ? So the first book I'm going to be recommending is 172 Hours on the Moon. This book follows 3 teenagers who win a trip to the moon, and while they're there, they get attacked by some unknown mysterious creature that NASA apparently knew about and just hid from the world. The book is pitched as 3 go to the moon, only 1 comes back alive. So if that's up your alley, you should definitely pick it up. I think I gave it a 3 or 4 stars when I read it originally. I thought that it was really good. I thought it was fascinating. It was really suspenseful, especially near the end. I think the only problem I had with it is that there was an unnecessary romance, but that was pretty much it. Otherwise, I actually really enjoyed this book. It's been a while since I read it, but I would highly recommend it, especially if you are new to thrillers and I've never read a thriller before. I think that this is a good leeway because it's a YA thriller. The next book we've got is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This is probably the only book on this list that's not strictly Halloween fall vibes, but I think that this book fits perfectly. I recently got the edition with the illustrations inside, and they are so pretty, and they definitely fit the theme of October and fall. Essentially, this book follows a young boy named Connor who wakes up in the middle of the night to find a monster outside his window that is demanding the truth from him. That's really all I want you guys to go into this book knowing. There is not much you should know going into this book because it's supposed to surprise you, but I definitely think it's one of those books that you can just kind of cuddle up and read in one sitting, in the fall weather, maybe outside if you live somewhere where it's nice out in the fall. It's just such a beautiful book. It's so heartwarming, and it's also one of my favorites. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars, and I've read it a couple of times, so definitely worth the read if you haven't already. Okay, so next I've got 2 books that are pretty similar, so I just kind of batched them together. That is Blake Crouch. Just in general, I'm recommending Blake Crouch, but specifically Recursion and then Dark Matter, which I don't own, but I'm sure I popped it up on the screen. These books are so mind-twisting and mind-bending, and if you like sci-fi, they're definitely a good sci-fi thriller book. If you don't like sci-fi, you would also like this book because it takes place on Earth. They all take place on Earth. They just have very scientific themes. So for instance, Dark Matter has to do with the idea of the multiverse, and you follow a character who gets kidnapped, and he essentially gets his life turned upside down, and he has to deal with the multiverse. I can't remember if he's a scientist or not. Maybe, perhaps. And then Recursion, which I'm actually currently reading right now. I'm a third of the way through it, but I already can tell that this is going to be a 5 stars because it's amazing. It has to do with memory and the idea of memory. There's a disease going around where people are remembering 2 different streams of life. They can remember 2 events in the past happening, they have a completely separate life in their memories that doesn't actually exist. The thing with Blake Crouch is it's another one of those books that you'd want to go into completely blind, not knowing anything that's going to happen, and so just have it surprise you. It's frighteningly scary, and realistic, and I definitely think it fits that spooky vibe that we kind of want in fall, if you guys are like me. Okay, so next we've got 3 books that are by the same author. This is Neil Gaiman. These are the books that I'm going to recommend to you from him. I've read quite a few of his books, not all of them yet. I'm working on it. I don't necessarily like all of his books, so there is a book on this list that I did not like, but I'm still recommending it to you because I think that you guys might like it. So the first book I'm going to recommend is Coraline. This is a classic. I'm sure you guys have all heard of it. It follows a girl who moves to a new house with their mom and dad, and it's in this really weird little town with all these weird neighbors and all of these weird things happening, and her parents are always super busy working, so they don't really spend time with Coraline, and she finds herself wanting a different life, and by doing this, she finds a little door in her house. You know, one of those like little cubbyhole doors that lead into like this small little space? Well, this door was locked when she came into her house, and now it's open, and she goes through to find that she has an entirely different family. They look exactly the same, but they treat her and they spend so much time with her, and it's like the life she always wanted but never really got, and then everything goes downhill, and it's scary as shit. It's terrifying. For a children's book, it's so scary. There's also a movie for it. Also watch the movie. I think that both of them are done so beautifully and so well done, and Neil Gaiman has this way of making things just like absolutely terrifying to the point where you're reading it and you're just like, oh my god. Just like on the edge of your seat, like hand shaking kind of feeling. So 100% Coraline is an October read. Y'all should read it. The next book I'm going to recommend is actually the book that I gave a 2-star, and this is The Ocean at the End of the Lane. I know a lot of people love this book. I just wasn't one of those people. However, I do understand that a lot of people will like it, and if you haven't read it yet, and if you've even read Neil Gaiman and you like Neil Gaiman, definitely read this book because it'll definitely be for you. I just happen not to like certain choices that Neil Gaiman makes in his writing, and that's like what this entire book was, which is why I didn't really like it. It's a magical realism book following a boy who goes in his house with his family, finds out he has these really weird neighbors who are magical or something. I think they've been along for a really long time, and he goes with one of the girls that's around his age into this forest, and it turns out that it's like a dimension hopper portal type thing to a different world, and because he's susceptible, he gets attacked by one of these monsters in this world, and it like uses him as a backpack almost to get into his world, and essentially then it takes over his entire life. And it's really scary and really creepy and really bizarre, like Neil Gaiman writes. I don't know if I understood it, to be perfectly honest with you. I was listening to the audiobook, so maybe that changed it. I don't know, but I definitely think it's worth a read, and it's very October, very fall, very creepy, very atmospheric. Also, it just kind of feels like a fairy tale, if that makes sense. Like one of those, like a fairy tale that you'd read to a child, except you would never ever want to read this kind of story to a child because they would have nightmares for the rest of their life. The last Neil Gaiman book I'm going to recommend is The Graveyard Book, which is actually my favorite Neil Gaiman book that I've read so far. I was really surprised to like this because it's kind of a slice of life episodic type story. You follow a little boy named Nobody Owens. His entire family was murdered when he was just a tiny baby, but yet he seemed to escape the murderer and found his way into this graveyard that was just down the street from his house. And there he meets 2 ghosts who decide to take him in as their new child, and they grow him up in this graveyard, and you basically watch him grow up in like different moments of his life in this graveyard, and he does all of these different things, and the murderer that originally killed his family is still looking for him, and there's just all sorts of things that happen, and it's just so cute and heartwarming and sweet, but also weird and creepy and kind of spooky in a way, and I think that it's perfect for October, and I 100% recommend this book because I loved it, and I don't own it. I need to buy it. It's on my list of things that I need to buy. Just haven't gotten around to it, but I love this book. It's so great. So the next book I'm going to recommend, I actually don't own the first one, but I own the second one, and that is Tunnel of Bones. The first book being City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. This is a new middle grade series that Victoria Schwab is writing, following our main character Cassidy Blake, who can see ghosts, and coincidentally, her parents are ghost hunters. They wrote, I think, a book series, and now they, at the beginning of the first book, have a TV show where they're going to go around to all of the most haunted places in the world and film episodes there, like a documentary type thing. And it's just so intriguing of an idea. It's a ghost story, first of all, and I think that the main character is so interesting. She has a ghost best friend, and it's just so good. Again, I gave the first book 5 stars. I loved it. It was such a quick read. You can read this book in a couple of hours, like literally in 2 or 3 hours. It does not take long at all. Highly recommend if you're looking for a more light-hearted ghost story, quick read in October. Pick it up, especially if you like Victoria Schwab, because Victoria Schwab's just an amazing writer. So the next book I'm going to recommend is The Diviners by Libba Bray, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. It's a great story. It follows a lot of different people, and you see all of their different perspectives, and they all converge in the story, and it's really interesting to see how that happens. Diviners are people who have these mystical, magical powers of some kind, and our main character, Evie, actually has one of these powers. She can read objects by touching them, so she can see into people's pasts, etc., whatever the object's meaning has. And she moves to New York to live with her uncle, who owns this creepy crawling museum, and all of these murders start happening, so she decides to help her uncle by using her abilities to try and figure out who the murderer is. And it's really interesting. And then like all the characters kind of end up getting caught up in it and end up meeting each other and getting in this whirlwind, and it's so interesting. It's a really creepy and atmospheric book. It also takes place in the 1920s, which is even better. Books that take place in different time periods, I think it's just so fascinating, and the 1920s is such a great time period for it to take place in. The last book we're going to be recommending today is My Plain Jane by Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. This is technically the second book in a series. However, the series are all like standalone books. The authors of these books decided to take famous Janes throughout history and then put a magical, fantastical twist on all of them in some way, shape, or form. And so this book is a retelling of Jane Eyre, but with ghosts, and Charlotte Bronte, who wrote the book Jane Eyre, is actually a character in this book, and it's really fascinating. There's like a ghost hunting society, and it's just like a humorous take on the story. These books are hilarious. I loved the fact that it had a ghost in this. I discovered last October that I love books with ghosts in them, and yet for some reason, there's just not enough of them in the world. So if you guys have any ghost recommendations for me, leave them down below. I'd love to read them. Like I said, it's a retelling of Jane Eyre with ghosts, and it's great and hilarious and just so funny. So if you guys are looking for a ghost story and you just want some humor in your life, this is the book for you. And you also don't need to have read Jane Eyre to read this book, by the way. They do explain it, I feel, pretty well. But those are going to be all the books that I'm recommending in this video. There is going to be a part 2, like I said at the beginning of this video, so if you guys liked these recommendations, keep a lookout for that, because there will be 10 more books coming your way soon. But that is all for this video. I hope you guys liked these recommendations. I'm curious if any of you guys have actually read any of these books, or if you're going to read these books now that I recommended them to you, or if you have any interest in this. Let me know down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Otherwise, that's it for this video. I will see you guys next time. Bye!